After a breakup, there's often a strong urge to text your ex-girlfriend and share your feelings. In this video, I'll explain when it's actually appropriate to do so. But first, we'll discuss a few false reasons why reaching out to your ex-girlfriend is definitely not a good idea. The first false reason is the fear that your ex-girlfriend will meet another man, fall deeply in love with him. He'll love her back, and they might even get married soon and have children. But think about it. If it was that easy to build a strong relationship with her, you would have made it work. Clearly, that's not the case. Do you really believe that after all the arguments and misunderstandings you had with her, she'll suddenly be happy, holding hands with another man and smiling like none of that mattered? Obviously, that's not how it works. In fact, studies show that the likelihood of breaking up increases with each new relationship. This means that with every new partner, the ability to maintain long-term love tends to decrease. Now, this doesn't mean she'll never find someone else. She might. But the potential she had to love you could have been much stronger than what she'll feel for any new man, even if he's better than you in some ways. That's because with each new relationship, her emotional sensitivity gradually fades. But I want to talk about something else. Never take responsibility for who your ex-girlfriend sleeps with. Don't allow yourself to think that a timely text or call from you will stop her. A woman won't force herself to be with someone just out of sadness. That kind of nonsense only happens in movies. If your ex-girlfriend truly felt miserable and heartbroken, why hasn't she reached out to you? And if she really wanted to, she wouldn't need to write. She could simply show up. Even if she's in another city, all it takes is buying a plane ticket. Problem solved in a single day. Now think about it. This is way easier than starting new relationships, exchanging numbers with random guys, sending selfies, possibly not even modest ones, going on dates, flirting, acting coy, or sitting on some guy's lap. Doesn't that seem obvious? And if your ex-girlfriend still went down that road, that's actually good news. Finally, you have clarity. You couldn't put an end to it yourself, so life did it for you. It's a clear signal. Forget it, she's not yours. She's a stranger to you now, someone else entirely. So, is it really worth texting your ex-girlfriend in that case? Clearly not. If she's alone, you'll just break the no-contact rule, which isn't helpful. And if she's with someone else, they'll probably laugh about it together. What's the point in that? The second reason. After a breakup, it's really hard to shake the feeling that your ex-girlfriend is gradually forgetting about you. Even though you logically understand that nostalgia tends to grow stronger over time, it's hard to truly believe it. There are men who've experienced ignore before and have seen how effective it is. They have no doubts about it. But when faced with a breakup again, they suddenly claim, maybe this time, ignore won't work. She's been silent for too long. What are they afraid of? Why does a man fear this silence? Because every new day of ignore after a breakup raises the stakes. It's not just the woman who feels the pressure during ignore. You feel it too. You're both silently testing who has stronger nerves. When you miss your ex-girlfriend, your mind starts throwing out countless reasons why you should reach out. For example, we didn't end things on the best note, so maybe sending one message could be helpful. Or you start thinking, I made too many mistakes before the breakup, so keeping my distance makes no sense. Since I've got nothing to lose, why not take the risk and be the first to reach out? But the worst feeling is when you're constantly checking up on her but still holding back. You think about her every day but resist texting first. When this goes on for weeks or even months, you eventually hit a point where you convince yourself, she must miss me too, she's just not showing it. She wants to reach out but can't make the first move. So why shouldn't I take the risk? I'll send a message and see what happens. These anxious thoughts usually hit hardest in the evening, and that's when the real struggle begins. Should I text her or not? Here's what I want you to understand. In many cases, ignore doesn't even start working until 6 months have passed. Start working, I emphasize. This means that her activity might not show up until a year later, or even longer. But here's the kicker. Most men break ignore around the 2nd or 3rd month, right when it's way too early for it to have worked at all. The desire to text your ex-girlfriend is almost always self-deception. And realizing this is actually quite simple. I've never seen or heard of a situation where a man regretted not reaching out to his ex the night before. It's not like he starts pulling his hair out, screaming, "I should have texted her." No, it's always the exact opposite. You wake up the next morning thinking, "Phew, I'm glad I didn't do something that foolish." But in my opinion, the most dangerous trap is falling for the illusion of a woman's uniqueness. You start convincing yourself that she's special, and that your relationship was unlike any other. Here's my response to that. Imagine a boy from a small town with a population of just 50 people. For him, every car in a big city will seem unique because he's seeing those colors and shapes for the first time. But give that same boy 2 or 3 years, and he'll be able to recognize not just the car model but even the year it was made in a split second. It's the same with relationships. To an experienced man, your ex-girlfriend is predictable, and honestly, even a little boring. I know that sounds strange. But a man who's been married for 10 years often knows his wife less than some guy on the internet who studies psychology. Why is that? Because living with a woman for 10 years doesn't actually give you knowledge, it just gives you meaningless memories. But memories aren't the same as knowledge. Patterns, insights, and a wealth of experience, that's what really matters. And you only gain that by analyzing thousands of stories, not just by failing at marriage twice. When a man says, "My situation is pretty common," it means he's starting to understand relationships. But when he talks about how unique his case is, it shows he knows absolutely nothing. So, stop thinking your ex-girlfriend is one of a kind, that she'll never come back to you, or that she'll forget you forever. Right now, the most important thing you should do is focus on this channel. Subscribe, leave a comment if you're struggling with a breakup, and I'll help you get through it. Share this channel with friends who are going through similar situations. If a woman leaves you, it will take about 6 to 8 months, at best, for your sense of clarity to return. Imagine a children's carousel. When the first signs appear that the relationship is falling apart, it's just starting to spin slowly. You still have the chance to jump off. But we're not ready to part ways with someone we believe is close to us just because of some minor issue. So, we keep dating, arguing, getting blamed, and after a while, the carousel spins faster and faster. The relationship becomes a whirlwind. You're too scared to jump off, but continuing to spin feels unbearable. And what happens in the end? You wait until the carousel throws you off by itself. Now you're dizzy, nauseous, your mind is foggy, and you've ended up here on this channel. Well, that's a good thing. You're here. Most men in this state just keep walking past. They don't see the point of ignore. They've already given up. What they don't realize is that the woman has gained absolute power in the relationship. A man doesn't understand that any woman, let me repeat, absolutely any woman, is capable of banging hysterically on your door, begging for the chance to apologize if the right conditions are created. But, of course, this isn't a quick process. In my youth, I also had moments when the urge to reach out to a woman was overwhelming. And you know what helped me resist the temptation to text her? The understanding that if I did, I would guarantee losing everything. There's no positive outcome. No hope. No chance. Even if the way I initiated ignore wasn't perfect, maybe the timing was off, or I said too much, the theoretical and practical possibility of success still remained. I've had many situations like this in my life. But if I were the first to reach out, I knew I'd lose it all for sure. The same applies to distancing. What do people often do in such cases? Instead of maintaining clear boundaries, a man will either try to please his ex-wife or go to the other extreme, acting out with obvious resentment and hatred. Obviously, most men text their ex-girlfriend in a moment of desperation, not confidence. At that point, it starts to feel like ignore doesn't matter to her anymore, and distance isn't working either. But how did you come to that conclusion? Based on her social media? Do you really think she's going to post stories with a tear-streaked, swollen face? Of course not. It's the exact opposite. The better she looks, the more she smiles, the worse she probably feels inside. If a woman has fallen out of love with you, there's no way to make her fall back in love within a few days or even a week. That's because it takes time and, most importantly, the absence of contact. You need a reset of her dopamine triggers, the erasure of negative associations, and the removal of emotional baggage. You have to create a genuine sense of loss and nostalgia. But nostalgia doesn't kick in overnight. Emotionally, for her to start feeling nostalgic, she needs to perceive your relationship as something from the past, and that usually takes at least 3 months. That's just how memory works. So, a man tries to achieve in a week what actually requires a year. I get it, you want to believe it's possible. But it's not. Yet people still keep believing in miracles. Especially after a breakup or divorce, when your ex-girlfriend sends a seemingly positive signal, like giving your post a like, saying something nice about you to her mom, or mentioning you in a friendly way within a mutual group, that's when it gets really tough for a man. Suddenly, it feels like if you don't respond to this tiny gesture, she'll get upset, hold a grudge, and never reach out again. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. If you fall for this micro-connection and respond, that's when you'll stop seeing any more positive signs from her. In my opinion, there's only one scenario where it makes sense to text your ex-girlfriend, when the hope of getting her back is destroying you. You might encounter an emotionally unstable woman who keeps coming back even after ignore, only to leave you again, and this cycle can repeat multiple times. At first, ignore might help you cope. But if she keeps returning, reopening old wounds, and breaking your heart over and over, then in that case, you can write her a long message, pour out everything you feel, and stop using ignore altogether. You might reply occasionally, but only to make it clear that you don't want her to come back anymore. And trust me, there are plenty of women like that. So before you even consider using ignore, ask yourself, do you really want her back?